Imagine, for a moment, that it is the year 1944. A German soldier, hardened by years of brutal fighting on the Eastern Front, perhaps a veteran of Stalingrad, or the relentless Kursk massacre, now finds himself a prisoner of war. He was captured on the Western Front, perhaps in the fields of Normandy, or during the desperate fighting in the Ardennes. His world until then was defined by scarcity, by the meticulous rationing of resources, by the constant struggle to maintain equipment with ever-dwindling supplies, and by a propaganda machine that painted the United States as a weak and decadent nation, incapable of a prolonged war. He saw the bombed-out ruins of German cities, the strain on his homeland's infrastructure, the desperate efforts to rebuild a war economy under the relentless Allied bombardment. Then he arrives in America. What he witnesses there is not just a different country. It is a completely different universe. The shock, the profound and disorienting shock that German prisoners of war experienced upon encountering the immense and limitless industrial might and seemingly endless supplies of the United States, is one of the most incredible and often overlooked curiosities of World War II. It was not mere surprise. It was an existential revelation that fundamentally challenged everything they had been taught, everything they believed about war, and ultimately, everything they understood about power itself. These men, many of whom had fought with distinction and bravery for the Third Reich, were transported across the Atlantic, often on the same ships that had carried American troops and war material to Europe. Their journey, in itself a marvel of logistics, took them to a land untouched by bombs, without the scars of direct conflict, a land that seemed to be a veritable cornucopia of resources and production. From the moment they disembarked, the contrast was stark, almost unbelievable. They saw bustling ports, not destroyed by aerial bombardment, but teeming with activity, pouring an endless stream of supplies in trains and trucks. They saw vibrant, intact cities, their lights shining brightly, a stark contrast to the blackouts and rubble of their own homeland. The first and most immediate shock for many was the food. In Germany, rationing had become a way of life, with every morsel accounted for: meat, butter, sugar, coffee. These were precious commodities, often supplemented by makeshift substitutes. Suddenly, in American prisoner of war camps, they were confronted with meals that seemed incredibly generous: fresh meat, white bread, butter, sugar, coffee. Milk, often in quantities that exceeded what they had eaten as free men, let alone as soldiers on the front lines. The accounts of these prisoners often detail their initial suspicion, believing this abundance to be a temporary facade, a propaganda maneuver. They stockpiled food, anticipating the inevitable return to scarcity, only to discover that the next meal and the next were equally plentiful. This was not merely sustenance. It was a psychological weapon, subtly undermining the narratives they had internalized. It spoke of a nation so rich, so capable, that it could feed its enemies better than the enemies could feed their own people. But the food, as surprising as it was only the first layer of a much deeper and more impactful realization. As they were transported across the vast American landscape, often by train, their eyes were opened to a spectacle of industrial power that defied comprehension. The magnitude of American infrastructure was all. They saw endless fields of crops, not just subsistence farms, but vast agricultural enterprises producing food on an industrial scale. They saw extensive rail networks, miles and miles of track laden with freight cars. Not just a few critical lines struggling under the weight of war, but a dense, interconnected web. And then there were the factories. That's where the real shock, which left everyone perplexed, set in. German industry, though formidable, was built on a different model. Generally smaller, more specialized, and increasingly under immense pressure from Allied bombing. The American model, however, was one of mass production on an unprecedented scale. These prisoners, many of whom were skilled workers or engineers, understood the mechanics of industry. Yet what they witnessed in America was unbelievable. They saw factories stretching for miles, gigantic complexes dedicated to a single purpose. They saw automobiles, not just military vehicles but civilian cars as well, rolling off assembly lines at seemingly impossible rates, crowding vast parking lots. This was a nation that, even in the midst of a global war, still maintained a vibrant consumer economy, a testament to its intrinsic productive capacity. They saw the seamless conversion of these civilian industries to war production. The Ford factory at Willow Run, initially designed for civilian car production, was transformed into an aerospace giant, producing B-4 Liberator bombers at a rate of 1 every 63 minutes at its peak, 1 B-24 per hour. For a German who understood the meticulous and often handcrafted process of aircraft manufacturing in his own country, this was not just impressive, it was terrifying. It wasn't just a factory, it was a symbol of a nation's boundless productive will. They saw shipyards, not just building a few ships, but entire fleets. The Liberty ships, designed for rapid modular construction, were assembled in a matter of days, sometimes even hours, from keel laying to launching. Henry Kaiser's shipyards became legendary for their speed, launching ships faster than German submarines could sink them. These weren't just ships, they were manifestations of an industrial hydra, where 2 ships were built for every one lost, and then 2 more, and 2 more. The seemingly endless procession of these vessels, laden with tanks, jeeps, trucks, ammunition, and food, crossing the Atlantic, was the lifeblood of the Allied war effort. For the German High Command, it was a logistical nightmare. For the prisoners of war who witnessed the emergence of this deluge, it was a terrifying display of unwavering power. The scale of steel production, the heart of any industrial nation, was equally impressive. American steel mills operated 24/7, belching smoke and forging the raw materials for tanks, weapons, ships, and airplanes in quantities that far exceeded the capacity of Germany, increasingly hampered by bombing raids and resource shortages. The enormous volume of raw materials, iron, or coal, oil that arrived at these industrial centers from across the vast North American continent was another point of profound realization. The United States was not merely producing, it was extracting, refining, and transporting on a scale that Germany, a resource-poor nation, could only dream of. German propaganda consistently portrayed the United States as a fragile, decadent nation, unprepared for war. They spoke of American soldiers as spoiled and inexperienced, and of their equipment as inferior. But what these prisoners saw directly contradicted each of these claims. They saw a nation not only prepared, but a veritable war machine. They saw workers, men and women, toiling in these vast factories, driven by a collective purpose. They saw a society that, despite the war, seemed to operate with an underlying ease and abundance, completely foreign to their experience. It wasn't just about military equipment. It was about the entire support structure. The endless supplies weren't just tanks and planes. They were spare parts for every piece of equipment, ensuring that vehicles and weapons could remain operational even after combat damage. They were mountains of ammunition, enough to sustain artillery bombardments of an intensity that German forces rarely managed to match. They were medical supplies, fuel, uniforms, rations, all flowing in an incessant torrent. Consider the contrast. A German tank crew in late 1944 could spend days, even weeks, trying to find a spare engine part or a specific type of ammunition. Their American counterparts, on the other hand, could often expect a damaged tank to be repaired or replaced relatively quickly, with supply depots overflowing with everything needed. This difference wasn't just tactical, it was strategic. It meant that American and Allied forces could afford to suffer losses, knowing their industrial base could replenish them quickly. German forces, on the other hand, were waging a war of attrition they couldn't win, each loss representing a permanent reduction in their combat capability. The psychological impact on the prisoners was immense. Many accounts speak of growing despair, of the realization that the war was impossible to win. How could Germany, with its limited resources and besieged factories, possibly have any chance of competing against such a powerful force? It wasn't just about firepower. It was about the fundamental capacity to wage a modern, total war. The United States had this capacity in abundance, and Germany did not. Some prisoners, initially defiant, began to question the very foundations of their beliefs. They saw a propaganda machine that had deceived them, not only about the enemy's weaknesses, but also about their own nation's strengths relative to their adversaries. The myth of German industrial superiority, a pillar of Nazi ideology, crumbled before their eyes. They witnessed a level of industrial organization and efficiency that, while perhaps different in approach from their own, was undeniably more effective in the context of total war. The experience extended beyond factories and supply chains. Even the American agricultural sector was a source of astonishment. Vast mechanized farms, producing food on a scale unimaginable in war-torn Europe, reinforced the image of a nation blessed with inexhaustible resources. They saw cities and towns where stores were still stocked, where civilian life, though certainly impacted by the war, continued with a vitality and consumer access that were a distant memory in Germany. It wasn't just about basic needs, it was about small luxuries, the variety of products available, the general sense of prosperity that permeated American society even under wartime conditions. The sheer number of civilian cars on the streets, their relatively free movement of people, the availability of gasoline. All these were stark reminders of the restrictions under which Germans lived. In Germany, gasoline was strictly rationed, and owning a private car was a luxury that had been largely sacrificed for the war effort. There, it seemed, fuel flowed freely, and the internal combustion engine powered not only the war machine but also everyday life. These observations were not mere casual glances. They were often detailed and analytical assessments made by men who had grown up in an industrialized nation and understood the importance of economic power. They observed, discussed, and gradually reached a consensus. Their nation had catastrophically underestimated the enemy. The Americans were not weak. They simply operated on a different plane of existence, one where resources were abundant and production capacity seemingly limitless. This profound realization was not merely a personal epiphany for the prisoners. It had broader implications. Upon their eventual repatriation after the war, many of these former prisoners of war carried these experiences with them. Their first-hand accounts, often shared with skepticism at first, slowly seeped into German society, contributing to a more realistic understanding of the factors that led to its defeat. This helped dismantle some of the persistent myths and fostered a new appreciation for the power of modern industrial democracies. The arsenal of democracy, as President Roosevelt called it, was not merely rhetorical flourish. It was a tangible and overwhelming reality. From the smallest rivet to the largest battleship, American industry proved capable of producing, equipping, and supplying more than any combined Axis power. This was a war of machines and logistics as much as a war of men and tactics. And on the industrial front, the Allies, led by the United States, possessed an insurmountable advantage. Consider the specific numbers, which would be incomprehensible to the average German soldier, let alone a prisoner. In 1940, the US produced only 6,000 military aircraft. The speed of production was impressive. The average time to build a Liberty-class ship fell from 230 days in 1941 to just 42 days by the end of 1943. One ship, the SS Robert E. Peary, was built in just 4 days and 15 hours. Imagine the disbelief of a German naval officer, accustomed 2 years of building a battleship or submarine, upon hearing of such a feat. It was a miracle of production, a testament to American ingenuity, standardization, and the tireless determination of its workforce. And it wasn't just about finished products. The entire supply chain was robust. The United States had access to vast reserves of raw materials within its own borders or via secure sea routes. Iron ore, coal, oil, timber, while Germany struggled to secure Romanian oil, Swedish iron, and synthetic rubber. The American industrial machine ran at full steam, fueled by a seemingly endless flow of natural resources. This self-sufficiency, coupled with immense productive capacity, created a war economy of unparalleled resilience. Even seemingly insignificant details left a lasting impression. The quality of American tools, the robustness of their packaging, the standardization of parts that allowed for easy repair and interchangeability. All this contrasted sharply with the often improvised and increasingly scarce resources available to German forces. A captured German soldier might marvel at an American Jeep, not only for its robustness, but also for its ease of maintenance, the availability of spare tires, engine parts, and fuel. The stories shared by these prisoners of war after the conflict often touched on a similar theme. The realization that the war was not only lost on the battlefield, but also in American factories and shipyards. They saw the sleeping giant that Japan had awakened, not only in its military might, but also in its industrial development. And this giant, once they awakened it, possessed a productive capacity that was simply too vast, too adaptable, and with too many resources for any adversary to overcome. Many German prisoners were housed in camps in the interior of the United States, often near small towns or rural areas. This experience offered them a unique glimpse into the structure of American society beyond the industrial centers. They observed the relative prosperity of farmers, the abundance of consumer goods in local stores, and the overall quality of life which, even under wartime conditions, far surpassed the austere existence in Germany. They saw children playing, women working in factories, and a general sense of normalcy completely foreign to their war-torn homeland. Some of these prisoners, initially hostile, underwent a profound psychological transformation. They began to question the Nazi ideology that had fueled the war and demonized its enemies. They realized that the degenerate and materialistic Americans, as portrayed by Goebbels' propaganda, were in reality a people of immense ingenuity, resilience, and industrial power. This direct and personal experience often proved far more impactful than any counter-propaganda effort. The impact of this industrial superiority extended beyond the battlefield. It allowed the Allies to pursue a strategy of overwhelming force, relentlessly bombing German cities and factories, knowing that their own production could quickly replace any losses. It enabled the development and mass production of advanced weaponry, from radar to the atomic bomb, which further widened the technological gap. It meant that Allied soldiers, from privates to British soldiers, were consistently better equipped, better fed, and better supported than their German counterparts. Consider the German soldier fighting in the Ardennes in the winter of 1944. His boots might be worn, his uniform tattered, his rifle perhaps a captured Soviet weapon or a last-minute Bull-Stur model. His American adversary, in contrast, would be equipped with warm, sturdy boots, a well-maintained M1 Garand, and a full supply of ammunition, with hot meals and medical assistance readily available. This disparity in equipment and supplies was no accident. It was the direct consequence of the industrial gap that German prisoners of war witnessed firsthand. The accounts of German prisoners expressing astonishment at simple things are particularly revealing. One account describes prisoners marveling at the vast quantity of toilet paper available, a product that was often scarce and rationed in Germany. Another speaks of their astonishment at seeing endless rows of identical KRC rations, each perfectly packaged and consistently produced, demonstrating not only quantity but also quality control on an immense scale. These small, seemingly trivial details, together, painted a picture of a nation operating on a scale and with a level of efficiency simply far beyond the experience of the Axis powers. The German war machine, despite its initial successes, was fundamentally limited by its resource base and industrial capacity. Its rapid early war wins were achieved through blitzkrieg, a strategy designed to win quickly before its inherent limitations could be exposed. Once the war became a prolonged and grueling conflict of attrition and industrial production, Germany was doomed. American industrial production, combined with that of Great Britain and the Soviet Union, created an insurmountable advantage. The shock experienced by these German prisoners, therefore, was not merely a personal observation. It was a microcosm of the broader strategic reality of World War II. It was the moment when the veil of propaganda was lifted, and the true, overwhelming power of the Allied industrial effort, led by the United States, became undeniably clear. For men who had been taught to believe in the superiority of their own system, it was a profound and often humbling lesson. They saw the future of war, and it was a future dominated by mass production, unlimited logistics, and an industrial base capable of absorbing staggering losses and still producing more. Their journey across America, from coastal ports to inland camps, was a journey of revelation. They saw not only the physical infrastructure, but also the underlying spirit of a nation united in its war effort. They saw women working in heavy industry, African Americans contributing to the war effort, and a society that, despite its internal struggles, was able to mobilize its entire population and economy toward a single, overwhelming goal. This collective mobilization, coupled with unprecedented industrial capacity, was the true secret weapon of the United States. It wasn't just the size of the factories, but their sheer number, each contributing to an endless stream of goods. The scale was so vast that it often overwhelmed the German mind, accustomed to a more centralized and frequently fragmented industrial planning. The American system, decentralized yet highly efficient, driven by capitalist competition and wartime cooperation, proved incredibly resilient and adaptable. This historical tidbit serves as a powerful reminder of the often unseen forces that shape global conflicts. While battles are won and lost on the front lines, The ultimate outcome is frequently determined by nations' ability to sustain their war efforts, produce, innovate, and supply their fighting forces. Say the United States, through its impressive industrial output, presented a challenge that the Axis powers simply could not overcome. The bewildered gaze of a German prisoner of war, contemplating an endless train of freight cars, or a factory producing bombers every hour, was not merely a fleeting image. It was a powerful symbol of the inevitable conclusion of World War II. It was the moment of overwhelming realization that the fight was, for all intents,